Hey everyone, and welcome back to Citywide Blackout, your home for the best creators from around the world. I'm your host, Max Bowen, and for this episode, we are back to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, and that is comics. Specifically, the City comic. You can read the whole thing on Webtoon, you can get the print copy, of course, and I'm now joined by the writer of the City, David Choi. Sir, welcome to the show. It is so cool to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Max.
All right, man. So as I mentioned, 2 issues in, I've got them both. It's a really, really cool comic, but I'd like to ask you just where the idea came from, because this whole thing basically is set in the city where these rival gangs are just like completely at war, and it's one giant like battleground for everyone.
So I think it's definitely like just like things that I really liked growing up. So I wrote that while I was studying writing, and it was one of my final projects to write a feature screenplay. We had choices. I chose the feature screenplay because I wanted to be a writer in the film industry. So I grew up watching a lot of Italian American crime movies like Godfather, a lot of Scorsese and stuff like that. So crime was always something that I always really loved. Sci-fi was also a huge influence for me, like Blade Runner. And then I also really love reading dystopian novels, Orwell. I'm blacking out right now, but Brave New World, all of that shit. So when it came to writing my final project, I was like, I'm only gonna, because one of the things that the professor told us was a lot of people will start their final project, but will never be able to finish it. So make it simple. So okay, let me just do stuff that I actually like writing about and thinking about. I think about sci-fi stories and crime stories all the time. So I just kind of mashed it all together, and then and then I just wanted to write a story where it's about this leader and it was his fall from grace. So it was his downfall. So it kind of started from there. Okay, gang leader, and then let's write about his downfall and how it all happens.
Okay. So you meant this originally to be like a screenplay for a feature film. What was involved
hmm
in sort of converting it to a comic strip? Because I know that those are two very different things.
Yeah. So it was actually it's my first time writing for a comic book. So it was there was a learning curve to it. I think one of the things when you're writing it for a script, like a film script, you kind of, especially as a writer, you kind of over see the details that a director would, or how even an actor would, or I don't know, like a location scouting guy would. You just kind of write it how you think the story is going to go, and then when the director actually picks it up, they kind of make it more real, right? And that's what I realized when I was writing it for a comic book. A lot of the details that I wrote in the script, description, didn't even matter because it didn't a lot of the times that it would even need to be translated into a comic book panel. And also the fact that a comic book there's limitations to page count. It's the same thing with film as well, right? Because you want to keep it within 90-minute range to make it entertaining, not drag out too long. So there is a limitation for film as well, but with comic books, it's something that I didn't even think about. And I grew up reading comic books, so it's it was surprising to kind of relearn the whole thing. Yeah, I mean it was I'm really not the best person because I'm not a pro. This is my first comic book project as well. But yeah, I think it's definitely I'm still learning right now. So
So what did you grow up reading for comics? Because given what you got here with the City, I'm curious as to what you read growing up.
my parents are big manga fans, manga readers. So I grew up reading whatever they were reading. And obviously certain things that my dad was reading super violent shit. He wouldn't let me read it quite yet. But one of the things that was still really violent and it was okay because it was for kids was Dragon Ball. And Dragon Ball the manga is super gory. I started watching the anime first because I grew up in the States when I was 5 to 8. Yeah, we would go to the Korean like grocery store, and the Korean grocery store would have bootleg Dragon Ball cassette tapes. So like my dad would be like, "Okay, this is like a really sick fucking anime. You're gonna love it." And I was like a 5-year-old kid. Like you put that shit on, and it's just like martial arts, like just dudes like buff dudes beating the shit out of each other. It's just like, yo, this is sick, right?
Oh yeah, man. And like what you mentioned about the bootleg anime, I did that shit too growing up. There was a store that sadly is long gone, but they sold, among other things, bootleg anime. So I was seeing like the Dragon Ball Z movies. I think the Pokemon movie, the first one, way before anyone else saw it. So when this thing came,
Yeah.
so when this stuff came out in the States, I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that like 4 or 5 years ago. So, and it was all these like really cheap copies and these like
Hmm.
cheap cases that you could tell this was just like not high quality. I was like, I don't give a shit. I get to see shit way before anyone else.
Yeah, and like a lot of times, like either they didn't have a certain episode or someone already rented it, so you're getting like bits of like the story.
Oh
So you
my.
would have to fill in the blanks once in a while. But
Well, given that it's Dragon Ball, I would say filling in the blanks is probably a safe guess to go with screaming, about to punch someone. Pretty much, it's Dragon Ball.
yeah, it's like next time in Dragon Ball Z, and then it's
Maybe
like
they'll actually throw that punch. Nope, they're not gonna. Nope, they're just gonna like scream
yeah,
some more. Never mind.
the entire episode is just like them staring at each other sometimes, just like grunting. Like,
God, yeah, that's a. There's a reason why the series is also known as Dragon Ball Z.
oh,
Takes
there we go.
takes
Yeah.
forever. But I love that your parents were also like major nerds too. So like were they really like influential and you getting into comics?
Oh yeah, because like we would have like especially when we were growing up in Seoul, in Korea we have like it's called manhwa, and it's basically manhwa is basically manga in Korean, right? It's like comic books, and bang means room, and you basically there's these manhwa you can pay like a fee, it's like $2-3, and you basically go in and it's like a comic book store filled with comic books. It's like amazing. So you pay like $3, and I think it's like I don't know if there's even a time limit. You just go in like an entrance fee, and it's just like a lounge with just comic books everywhere, all you can read.
Why do we
So
have that
after like,
here? Holy shit.
yo, I know, like I've always thought about like, hey, what if we like do something here like that? But then I don't know if it'll work because the thing is, like Korean people are pretty like nice. Like we're not gonna like steal or from the business or anything like that. But if I do it like here, like in North America, I think there's a lot more problems you have to deal with. Just because like that like culture is not the same.
Yeah, you would like close this door and realize, huh? So I'm missing like 2/3 of this series, 3 issues of that series. That one's completely gone. What the fuck?
Yeah, and then like maybe even vandalism, like people are ripping like
Oh
pages. I don't
yeah,
know.
drawing stuff in
Um,
there, kids.
yeah. So yeah, so when we have like family outings, like family dinner and stuff, like after like dessert or whatever, we'll just go to like my parents would take us to a manabang, and there my dad would like just show me like what he used to read when he was a kid, like old Japanese like classic manga. So I actually grew up reading a lot of classic mangas, which is um I think classic manga is like the shit. There's a few guys that are doing it like now, but they're not the ones that are really getting acclaim. So when I hear people when kids talk to me about anime and like the mangas they're reading, I'm just like, oh dude, you have no fucking idea. These classic mangas are like they're so much deeper than what you're reading right now. Like it's all a copy right now. Um,
Well,
but
I I think
yeah.
it's the same with like classic comics. Like Marvel and DC.
Hmm.
Like back in the day, it's so different from what it is now. Now it's just like splash page, punch to the face, splash page. All this kind of
Right,
shit.
yeah.
So the style has changed a lot. Especially and then you see kids today reading, like whatever the new Spider-Man is. You're like, oh man, you kids got like no idea what it's really like.
Yeah, I recently picked up. I don't want to bash anyone, so I'm not going to say the title or anything. But I recently picked up a. I'm not even going to say who the publisher is, but it was like not good, just like really watered down, right? And I'm like, man, this is like terrible. Like, there's no like, what is it? There's no I felt like there was no like stake to the story. And I don't want to sound like I'm a great writer. I'm a fucking amateur writer, but I mean, this is just me as like a writer and a fan. Like, I thought it was just like really watered down, and it was like it's like a big publisher and everything. So I was like,
I
oh shit.
I really don't disagree with you because I think that that's the thing about the big companies. I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't have this deep insight into the comic industry, but I feel like with the indie companies or the people who just publish their own comics, you're seeing a lot more depth because they have to work harder to get that same attention.
Right, right,
So like I'll just give a shout out to AWA. They're in my opinion, one of the best comic creators out right now. Their stuff is fucking amazing. Pick any of their titles, you're likely going to enjoy it.
hmm
And they started like 2 years ago. During COVID, I think it's when they launched. Is actually right during the height of the pandemic, and they're still going strong today. They're selling out pretty much, and they're really getting they're really making a big name for themselves. So again, I think that's just that indie
right, yeah.
comics. You're seeing more depth, more stake, and a lot more work that kind of goes into it. But anyway, that's my like kind of like old man comic rant for the day.
Yeah, I mean, I always have old man comic rants, so
Nice, nice. All right, well, then why don't we swing back to making the city? Given
hmm
your folks, given their influence, when you told them, Mom, Dad, I want to make my own comic, how did they react to that?
No, I mean, I didn't even tell them. Like, I just like did it.
Ha! Nice.
Funny thing is, like, just like a few months ago, last year, my sister got married in Seattle. So it was like a family reunion, and I don't get to see my parents that often. Like, I think it was like the first time in like 5 years, and it's usually like 3 5 years I see my like family all together. So like they see me through Instagram and social media. I'm selling comic books in the streets, and they think like this is like what I'm doing with my life now. So they're like, "Hey, what's going on with you? Like, you need money? I see you like selling comic book. How is that going? Is that like enough?" Like, I'm like, "Yo, dude, like I have another job right now."
Yeah. It's
Like,
like, nope, it is definitely not enough.
yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah, but that's what I like to see though, the hustle. That's what I really liked about your Instagram stuff. You're out there hustling. You're out there selling this thing on street corners. You're at events and so forth. So, you know, given that you're like you're the writer and of course the guy in charge of this thing, what's the hustle like for you?
I mean, I think the hustle is like part of the fun. Like, I mean, at least for me, I'm not like I'm a I like to go out there. I backpacked. I did door to door like lawnmowers. Like, you know, I mean, like when I was a kid, I went to door with my lawnmower. To mow lawns is what I'm saying. Yeah, so like I kind of like the whole like hustle part a lot. When we did like finish our first like issue, because I went in like head hard, like just like let's make a fucking comic book. Let's finish the first issue, and then like it was done, and then what? Right now we have 300 fucking copies of comic books just sitting at home. Right? Yeah, we sold like maybe 50 to like the Kickstarter backers, and now we have like 250 left. Right? So it was like, so what now? So we signed up for a comic book convention, and then we went there, and then we actually ended up selling like maybe 100. We did really well, and then I still had like 150 left, and it was like November, December, I think, at that point, and it was like super cold outside and like whatever, and it was COVID, so it's like lockdown and everything. But I think that just like pushes you too. It's like, okay, now you have 150 comic books like sitting at your home. You better do something about it. Like, it's not going to sell itself, right? And at first, like, it was definitely like nerve wracking to bring like 50 copies in your backpack and then go out in the streets and like try to like sell it. But like as soon as you like get over that hurdle, it's like super easy. You're just there, and people find it intriguing too, so they'll come talk to you. And it's like fun. It's like exhilarating to be there, and then you can actually talk to people about your comic book. they're like, "Hey, what are you doing here? Like, it's fucking snowing. What are you doing here?" Like, moms will be concerned, right? Like, random moms will come and then be like, "Hey, like, what are you doing?" I'll be, "Oh, this is my comic book. I'm trying to sell comic books." And then a lot of moms like to buy it. I don't think they don't even read it, right? But they hear my story and they'll like buy it. A lot of like I would get tips from them too. Like they'll give me like a $20 bill and be like, "Hey, this is just for you. Like, good luck." So
Nice. There you go, man. There you go.
yeah, so it's really not that bad. I have like a lot of my friends in the community who ask about that. They're like, "Oh, maybe I should do it too." I'm like, "Yeah, dude. Like the hardest part is just packing your shit and then actually going out there. And even when you're out there, like it's hard to even set up. But once you're set up, what are you gonna do? You're gonna pack up again and leave? Like just stand there and see
Oh,
what happens."
sell those fucking comics, man. Sell those things. Nah. And I gotta be honest, man, I could not do this. Like, I'm not that kind of person who could just be out there and selling his stuff. So, props to you for just, working that, just working the angle, working the hustle.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. All right. Let us talk about the team behind this because you are not a solo act. You have
Hmm.
your illustrator, Dickie Serger, and your
Yeah,
colorist, Dave Pretorius, who epic last name, Dave. Epic last name.
yeah.
Uh,
Everyone loves the last name.
seriously, amazing last name. How'd you meet these dudes, and kind of what led to you saying, "Okay, I had this idea. We're doing this thing."
I know Dickie through a friend of a friend, and when I found out he was an illustrator, almost immediately. I mean, not immediately, but like the thought was there immediately because like I've already had written this like story when I was a student. So whenever I like see like opportunities, I keep it in the back of my head. And I was like, "Oh shit, this guy's an illustrator. I've always wanted to make comic books, and I already have a script ready, but I kept it to myself." And then when COVID was happening, we went out. This is like before we even knew COVID was going to happen. We went out to a bar and we're all like drinking. And then I got to a point where I was drunk enough that I had the courage to be like, "Hey, Dickie, by the way, I have this like comic book project. I know you're a comic book nerd. I'm a comic book nerd too. Like when we get the chance, I think we should like sit down and work together." And he was like, "Yeah, fuck it, let's do it." Like whatever, we're both drunk. And then COVID happens, and then for like a year, I don't even bring it up. But then like we're locked down, and then that's also pressure, right? Like I'm a pretty I like to be creative. Being locked down was like very like challenging. I was trying to like do all these other projects to keep my mind like occupied. But at the end of the day, like it always came back to like, "Hey, what about the story that you wrote like 12 years ago when you were a kid, like student? And then what about that thing you told Dickie about that how you were gonna make a comic book and like Dickie he's gonna be the illustrator." And then day after day, it just kind of kept building up. And then I called him again, and then I was, "Hey man, I think we should definitely do this. Like, are you down?" And then we started off with weekend like meetings, like Saturdays. Every Saturdays we met up, and then we would discuss the script, the world, the characters, and then we gave each other homework. So next Saturday we have like this district of the city. This is what it's gonna look like. This character, he's gonna be wearing this kind of clothes. This is what he's like based off. Like this is like his characteristic and all of that. It was really slow, so that was like 6 months just developing it. Oh, as for Pretorius, for Dave is Dickie's classmate from school when they studied animation, I think, together at Algonquin College in Ottawa. So he joined after we finished the first issue. So we did the first issue in black and white, and then I did we did like a survey, and we kind of like we asked people, "Hey, would you like to see this colored?" And then a lot of people said yeah. I was also curious on what it would look like colored. And then at that point Dickie like kind of reached out to his friends, and then Dave came into the picture, and then we gave Dave like a page, and yeah, and then he was like perfect for it. So right away, as soon as we saw like what he did, Like we knew like he was completely aligned because the color palette that me and Dicky were thinking about, Dave was on top of it. Um, I really think Dicky and Dave, they really work really, really well together. Like stylistically and the way they work, yeah, they really complement each other. Like Dicky's line work gives enough room for Dave to be creative, and because of that, Dave makes Dicky's line work just look amazing as well. Yeah, and like even for like chapter 3, which we're reviewing right now, I'll look at like certain details on like how Dicky like lined certain like objects, and then on top of that, Dave coming in and coloring it. I'm like, man, like it's so good. I'm also biased, but like for me, yeah. But I see stuff like that, even like minuscule like details. I'm like, man, you guys are really good together.
I would say if I had to sum this thing up, it would be intense. There's a lot of action here. There's a lot going on here, and the colors that they choose for this and the way that everything's drawn, you really capture the action. Whether it's the fighting, the gunshots, just all the violence. This thing is. If it was drawn a different way, it just wouldn't look as good. But those two do a really good job, just sort of bringing that action to life and in a really, really good way.
Hmm.
Now, I'm curious, did you have to give them like a lot of input as to, okay, I want it to look like this or this? Or were they able to just take that script and say, okay, here's what we're doing?
Yeah, so this is where it's kind of like controversial. I'm kind of a dictator when it comes to storyboarding, and that's because that goes back to that goes back to me not knowing how comic book really works, like writing for comic books, how it really works. So when we first experimented with the first few pages, me and Dicky, I gave him like the script, and then he was supposed to do like a page or two. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh no, this is not how I wrote it. And then we kind of went back and forth, and then I realized, oh, it doesn't work. Or, like I have to go in and I have to like storyboard it myself. And even then, there's still like details because at the end of the day, I don't want him to just like trace everything that I do. Like he needs his own like thing input. So yeah, like okay, I mean, but it still comes from I mean, I know certain artists do work like this, but a lot of them don't. Like I know a lot of pros, like writers are just writers, and then the illustrator does all the like storyboarding, and then maybe they'll give options, and then they get to pick like whatever. But I'm a fucking dictator on this. Like I'm really like I think Dicky wants to kill me sometimes. Like when I say no, this has to be done again. I'm also like a stickler for it because I mean that's like not fair for me to say it because I think any comic book nerd would say like would say the same. Um, detail oriented, right?
Oh
Because
yeah, I think you have to be, especially because like this is your baby. This is your creation from years ago, and I think too when it comes to being like you call yourself a dictator, but then again, you guys are still working together. You got 2 issues out, third one on the way. If you were really that bad to work with, I don't think they would stick around.
fair enough, fair enough, fair enough.
So
Maybe
I,
it's getting close though. Maybe it's getting
maybe,
close.
yeah, you never know. Maybe there will be no issue 3. Maybe it'll be issue 3. Will be the last one. You never know. But I know. I think there's kind of a fine line between being detail oriented and just being this control freak that just no one wants to be a part of. So maybe you kind of hit that sweet spot in between the 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, also like Dickie and Dave are just two like the nicest dudes, dude. So um, I think there is like a sweet spot where we understand that this is what we really like doing. We love it's like our passion, right? And in as a team, we're letting each other kind of do like certain things. Um, but sometimes I think I can have a little bit too much hold over them. But it's something I'm gonna have to work with.
Well, so far so good. So far so good. Okay, I want to talk about the characters because you got some pretty cool characters. You got Jericho. He's the president of the Legions, more or less been protecting the city from organized crime. But now, he's getting older. His best days are kind of behind him, and he wants to sort of relive the past. How does he go about doing that? What's his overall role in the story?
So I think one of the reasons like why I chose this like arc for him was when I was studying writing, you get to learn about all the different tropes, like hero tropes, right? The character tropes, and I really like the idea of a tragic hero. I mean, just like the way it sounds, a tragic hero. That sounds artsy as fuck. And I was like 20-year-old kid. I'm like, oh, I gotta write my story, and it has to be a tragic hero. So as dumb as that sounds, that was like the motive behind creating an old guy whose best years are past him, well past him. Oh, and also it's because it was soon after watching No Country for Old Men as well. So there was a lot of like, I mean, I'm a huge movie geek, so it was whatever I was watching, and it was influenced by at that point of my life, and that was like 20-year-old David, and I think there was like a fascination between like what happens when the world doesn't really need you anymore. And I've actually talked to my dad about this as well, because like after I finished watching The Country for Old Men, like the first person I talked to was my dad, because he was like the old man that I can talk to. So I kind of got his like perspective. I went to my friends' dads and like heard their like what their thoughts were about just getting old and their feelings. Um, yeah, so like that, and yeah, that was like the initial thought in writing a story around like a tragic hero and the fall from grace. But I also wanted to write a character that is like the polar opposite of him as well. And I wanted that to be really exciting. And a structure that I kind of like copied is like Fargo, because Fargo starts with the villain, and that's like the whole act, and then you see like the hero, the detective, come in, right? And I thought that was like really like interesting, like structurally. No other movie like really does that well. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but that was also like a influence of like focusing on like the bad guy and
Hmm.
his fall from. But in the story, as we read, and if you get to that point where I get to finish the story, you guys will see like there's also the polar opposite character that comes in to balance that act. Because
Yeah.
or else it's going to be such a depressing story, just like angry old man, gangs fighting, just killing each other. So there needs
Yeah.
to be a little bit of bring of hope, I think.
Yeah. Well, you've also got this other character, Kay, and Kay is kind of like he's kind of like the young upstart. Basically, he's looking to change things, and we see him just causing chaos for the sake of like causing chaos. What do you think he brings to the table? Where is he sort of taking the story?
So when I when I wrote this, there's a lot of these like characters do have like they do represent like symbols and like illusions and all of that. I don't want to like ruin it too much. Because it's not even I'm not even far away enough in the story where I think readers are able to develop certain things like that. So I don't want to like go too far into it, but at the moment I could say that he is, at least to Jericho, he thinks Kay is the person that he can't control right now. And but we'll see. Maybe Kay's not the only one.
Yeah, because you also got this other character, Comox. If there's like a wild card here, it's going to be him because he's not really like a gang leader. He's just sort of there. But
Mhm.
this guy's like a young prince, trained from birth, destined to be his tribe's greatest warrior. So I feel like if there's going to be an X factor here, it's going to be him.
Yeah. So basically, other than the Legion and Jericho, all the other characters and their factions are it's opposing factions. But Comox is an interesting character because he's there to help Jericho, and that's going to be revealed in chapter 4, which is being inked right now. We're almost done inking chapter 4 right now.
Mm.
So in chapter 4, we'll reintroduce Comox, and yeah, he's put in the situation where he is helping Jericho, and for Jericho, um, he doesn't like that either because you know it's he's aging, and it kind of represents to his people that he can't handle his business anymore.
I see. I see. All right. One thing I was really curious about, because I mentioned earlier that this is not just available in print, but you can also check it out on Webtoon right now, folks. If you don't get it, it's a free app.
Hmm.
Download it. Thousands of comics. The end. How'd you get in touch with these guys, and how'd you sort of get onto the platform?
We're on Webtoon, but it's you can also read it on our website for free. Um, so Webtoon's a Korean company. So when I was growing up, so Webtoon was becoming really, really big. A lot of like Korean TV shows, Korean movies are also all Webtoon based, influenced by Webtoon. So I always knew it was there. But when I was making the comic book, one of the it's basically when I was out there selling comic books in the cold was when I realized, oh, okay, so this isn't the best way either. Yeah, sure, I'm moving the comic book from that are in my house, and I'm selling it, but this is also not the most efficient way. Like this should be moving automatically online or something. And in order for that to happen, I need a fan base. And then I realized, and then I had that aha moment. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's all about the fan base first. So how do I gain a fan base? So Webtoon is one of the big. I think it is the biggest like online comic book platform. The only thing is about Webtoon is you have to be very organized. You have to have like a release date, and you have to be very punctual about it. So when we first released it, we actually did have like a bunch of views, and then when we released the second issue, which was like months after, it just completely dropped. And then I realized, oh, okay, so Webtoon's not really doable because we're not like actually like paid pros. We do this on like Saturdays, you know. Me and the boys just get together on Saturday to make comic books. So it's not like something we do like professionally. So we can't keep up with Webtoon. So I propose, hey, let's just release it online on our website as well, and then let's just try to promote it as much as possible. So right now, like since we released it online, I think that was in November last year. We're getting like average of like 200 people uh every week coming in. Uh, so it's better than nothing. Because if not, like no one's reading my comic book, right? So I'm just really just trying to build this fan base right
Yeah,
now.
and really, it is one reader at a time. You know, I mean, like you said, you're very new to this. It's your first
Hmm.
project. Um, yeah, it really is a one person at a time process. I think anyone who starts a comic and thinks, "Oh yeah, this will get picked up by Marvel tomorrow, and I'll be making billions of dollars," it's a fucking unicorn. It's never gonna happen. You know, it really
Yeah,
is. You know, going to the cons and giving out your comic for free if you have to. Ideally, people will buy it, but you do what you gotta do to get that out there and get the fan base going.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd rather have someone read it than anything. And even like if someone buys it, if they don't like it, like at least I want to give them the option to like read it for free, and then they can choose to like not like it. I don't know. Maybe that's like foolish,
Yeah,
but
I get you, man. I get you. All right. So where is this series going? I mean, no spoilers, but how long a series is going to be, and what are we going to see?
so it's 23 chapters long. It's divided into four parts. The first part one, is going to be chapters 1 to 5. So I finished storyboarding chapter 5, so it's all ready to go. Um, so the first part is really it's the setup. They're seeing all the characters where they are, and then the inciting incident of what like pushes K to actually starting the war. So right now, at least from chapter 2, one of the things that I do is like I make everything really vague. So it's really up to the readers to fill in the blanks. Um, a lot of people hate it. Like even like today, like my writing partner in New York, I sent him all my scripts all the time, and I sent him chapter 3 for review, and he's like, "I have no idea what the fuck's going on." Like, I know it's one of your things. You don't like to explain like scenes, but like I'm so lost.
Yeah, not gonna lie, reading chapter 2 some of the initial pages, I was like, "What the fuck am I even seeing here? Who's this dude? What's this thing that's happening?
Yeah,
What's going on here?"
yeah, yeah. So I think hopefully when chapter 5 is done, it'll flow much naturally because at the moment the first 4 chapters are pretty much standalone. It's like introduction points for different like characters. Um, and then in chapter 5, it's an inciting incident where Kay is like he's gonna start the war against Jericho. Because in chapter 2, what it alludes to is like Kay is really just unifying his people within the ruins. He's not actually starting a war or anything. He's just making sure the ruins is his. But after chapter 5, he's gonna move his troops into the city, and big wars go up. He's also gonna look for recruitments and other sides of the city, other gang members. Each gang has their own like specialty. Almost like the way I created these like factions is like I thought of them as like ninjas, like how Naruto has like ninja clans and stuff. But it's like gangsters in like a dystopian like society. Um, so in part 2 and 3, we're gonna see a lot of like these like different like sides of the city. Different styles of gangsters. Um, yeah, and then we're gonna see like how cruel like Jericho is, and then him just getting old and how he can't handle situations.
Yeah, I love how his like signature weapon is Sweet Wendy, a sawed-off shotgun that he carries inside his suit. That's like so perfect there.
Yeah, so we get to see that in chapter 4. So I think it's actually one of the latest pages that Dicky just like finished as well. So yeah, we get to see that. And as the story progresses, we're gonna see him see more of that. Like he's gonna pull that sweet Wendy and just start blasting people.
Nice. Looking forward to that, man. Looking forward to that. All right. All right. Well, David, man, unfortunately, dude, we got to bring this thing to a close. But this has been a lot of fun, man. I'm really enjoying the comic. And one thing I also want to mention that you guys also basically have your own company here. It's called Sarazard. It's where all the information is. The comics are out there, and
Hmm.
you kind of made this to produce the comic. But do you see this thing growing? Do you want to pick up like more titles?
Yeah, I mean, so I've actually pitched to some of my writer friends. They mostly write for film, and since now I'm doing just like comic books, I was like, hey guys, like if you guys want to write comic books, I'll produce it for you. Like just write it, and then I can have more like titles on the side. But um, again, like I have another job like that supports my life. That takes a lot of time, and I don't know if I have enough time to manage other people's projects. But on the side, we're doing really cool things. So, for example, we're making a VR like short story thing. So our proof of concept is already finished. So what we're trying to establish with that is we're making 1 minute like VR short stories using characters from the city, and then showing them in their own light apart from the main storyline. So they seem you can relate to them more, and as you're reading it, you'll understand why they behave a certain way. So the first one is the gangster Camus, who in the first episode he mentions that he played baseball in Old Toulouse. So we have we use that whole baseball thing, and when you wear the VR headset, he has like a bat and he has like a grenade that he's kind of tossing around. And another thing is that since we already rendered that 3D model, we're gonna make the 3D model downloadable on our website, so you can take it to your local library and then you can print it out as an action figure. So that's in the works right now. Yeah, so I'm just trying to like do whatever it takes to like kind of bring more value to this story, and also just trying to grow a fan base by giving up more free things. But just just read the comic book. If you don't like it, like it's fine. Just say you hate it. Go on my Instagram and say, hey, you fucking suck, dude, or like whatever.
Oh
But I'm just
man,
trying to like I'm trying to offer as many things as possible, and I think
Yeah.
action figures are pretty fucking cool. So
Fuck yeah, man. Give me some of those, dude. Absolutely. I am a sucker for merch of all kinds. If you got action
mhm.
figures, I'll buy them. If you got posters, I'll put them on the wall. I am a sucker for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's been really hard to sell them.
But you know what? It's down to one person at a time. That's what you
hmm
get. You get one
Yeah,
person at a time, and that's how you build yourself your massive fan base. And in the meantime, folks, you can go to serazard.com, serazard.com. The comics are there, the backstory is there, the social links are there. I'll keep saying because it's got to be said. Follow these guys, like their socials, comment on their posts, tell them they fucking suck if that's what you actually think. Interaction of all kinds of good, it's how this whole thing grows. And David, man, looking forward to the next conversation. We'll check back in about the story and see where it's going.
awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Max.
And that'll bring this episode to a close. You can follow the show on Facebook under Citywide Blackout, and Twitter and Instagram under Citywide Max. Get at me at citywidemax@yahoo.com, and check the show out wherever you find your favorite podcast, as well as every Saturday at 10 p.m. on Boston Free Radio. That's all for now, and I'll see you next time.